Welcome to episode 7 of the Anxious Tradeswoman podcast, where I, your host, Louise Azzopardi, teach you the things that I've learnt through the years, through the tears, so you don't have to. So I'm a heavy vehicle and plant mechanic by trade, and this episode 7, is all about burnout. So in episode 1, when I shared about who I am, I did mention the time in my life where I spent 4 months not working full time because I had burnt myself out. At that point in time, I had just come back from International World Skills. I was working full time. I was teaching at a women's shed. I was doing some public speaking stuff, and I was casually mentoring girls through social media. So I had quite a full plate. And on top of that, I was also, having all family events. I, with my partner at the time, was doing some stuff, just doing life. And it felt like I was walking through water. Every movement just seemed so hard. And I couldn't get rid of it no matter how much I slept. And my body was just like, no, I just couldn't do it anymore. Jobs that should have taken me an hour were taking me all day. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And my mental health was struggling. And I just was feeling overwhelmed all the time. And I was doing all these things that I loved. I loved being a mechanic. I loved teaching at the women's shed. I loved mentoring the girls. I loved speaking about my journey and encouraging women into the trades and people into the trades. But I just couldn't do it. I was just so exhausted. There's a few different kind of ways we get burnt out. And so often we talk about, oh no, I'm burnt out. But for one, how do you catch it? And how do you recover from it? Not how you catch burnout. You can't catch it like the flu. But you can be grown up with a really high functioning family and be super high functioning. And then it does, it adds up. And one thing I want to point out is burnout is often more common in women. And I found as a woman in the trade, we can tend to be, we're trying not to seem bothered by any, not harassment, but any of those sly comments that bother us. We're, trying to prove ourselves. If someone's told us that we've only got this opportunity because we're a girl, we're just trying and working in the trades. I did say it's more often that it's women that get burnt out, but the trades, if you're customer facing, if you're starting your own business, on top of everything else, on top of life, especially with women as well, if you're a mum or, you're trying to work full time plus, you've got a lot of home duties, it all adds up. I had two lovely clients, one previous client, one current client. One of my previous clients was like, I'm doing all this stuff I love, but I'm just so tired all the time and I don't have time to clean the house and I'm falling behind in my study. And I'm like, so what do you do with your time? And she's like, well, I usually work and then I go out and have a dinner with friends. And I'm like, oh yeah, so do you go out on Friday night? And she's like, oh, I go out with a different group of friends every night. We just go out for dinner, I don't drink. And even that, being on at work, communicating and working and being mentally stimulated at work. And then, even though hanging out with friends can fill your heart, it still can be physically draining because you're engaging in all these conversations, you got to listen, you're, out and about doing something, and it gets you down. And, if we don't recognize it, generally we either get burnt out to the point where we're overwhelmed and we're panic attacks and we're super depressed or super anxious. And if we don't listen, then sometimes our body forces us to listen. So one of my current beautiful clients, she got herself so burnt out that she was opening the car door and her hand-eye head coordination was not so great, and she opened the door and whacked herself in the head and gave herself a concussion. So I do not recommend anyone to get to that point, but if you do, you really, if you get to the burnt out, not functioning, you really need to wipe your calendar, sleep for 2 weeks, and then do like a week or two of easing back into social life, like doing some friends, doing some family stuff, and then get back into work on a thinned out schedule. So, you know, taking on smaller, easier tasks and watching how much you work. If you aren't at the point of total obliviation of, you know, you can still function, but you're like, it's coming. Thin out your schedule, including not just your work schedule, your family schedule as well. Like, I know sometimes I just can't go to family events. It's just too much. If I've had a busy week at work and having a family event, it can seem like work, and sometimes it is, especially if you've got some challenging relatives or there's a lot of them. So you have to, like, you got to be mentally on because there's just so much stuff happening. Like, it takes your energy. So when we're talking about thinning the schedule, it's got to be thinning the schedule at work and the schedule outside of work. So that's to slow it down. And, you know, even if you've gone to the point of burnout and total obliviation, you can come back from it. It does take a bit longer than if you had caught it. And like I said, I've been at that point where I had to take 4 months off working full time, and then I have caught it a few more times where, I've caught it and I'm like, shit, I'm starting to feel like that. I need to take a week or two off. And then there's also times when I've had to cancel or reschedule things because I can feel that I need an afternoon off or just one day off. And it's really important to do that and follow up. And I know for some of my clients, I really try and live by that, even though I still get caught out. I get on a roll, so you can get on a roll doing all these good things and everything just lines up and you're just like, I got all these amazing opportunities. It's so good. But you're forgetting to fill your own cup. And even though everything's amazing, you kind of get a bit caught out. So one thing that I do is sometimes I do move my clients around to give myself an afternoon off, to give myself a day, because sometimes, like, if I am showing up burnt out and not functioning, then it's not helping them either. And when I can set that example for them, then it shows them that they can reschedule. They can say no. They can move things around. You can. And often we kind of feel like we can't move things around because we don't want to miss opportunities. We think everything's going to fall out of the sky if we move something or reschedule something or say no. But it's not. It's not going to fall out of the sky. Just thinking of another friend who had a cyst burst on her ovary and then it got infected because she was putting it to the side. Things like that, they happen. Our body forces us to slow down, and you don't want to get to that spot. So when we're working on the tools, it can look like saying, hey, I can't work this Saturday. Hey, I can't do overtime on Fridays anymore. I'm getting too tired. Or, simple general rule of thumb you can put in for yourself, like either you only work every second Saturday or you only do overtime 3 days a week. Just little things to make the schedule sustainable. Sustainable is what you want. You want it to be sustainable. And yet, like, sometimes we do have phases in our life where we have a lot more going on. We got either more family stuff or work super busy. But it's really important that after a chunk of busy time, we do slow down. We're not machines. We can't function at full capacity forever. We can function at full capacity, but usually we need to have a break and wind down. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's important to take a breath, slow down, and rest. Really, really rest. And it's funny because as I'm recording this podcast, I needed to put the battery on charge. So I just laid on the floor and stared at the ceiling for about 10 minutes while the battery charged. And even me recording this podcast, I delayed it 2 weeks because I did need a day to myself because I had, done all these things that I loved, but I was just to the point of exhaustion. There's no shame in saying, hey, I need to reschedule. Hey, I can't do that. There's nothing wrong with that. all your opportunities will come back to you. And trust me, if you're tired and you're getting to that point of burnt out, and like I've broken my nose because I've just been too tired to get out from under a truck and get another tool that would be safer. And it didn't need to happen. Like, it happened, and you have to move on and accept that it happened. But really, I share this with you so then you don't get to that point where you are injuring yourself because something has happened. So take time to rest. Sometimes that's why I end my podcast with take a nap if you need, because I am high functioning, and I do know that I attract some more high functioning people into my circle. So rest if you need it. But I really like to end on thanking this episode's sponsor, which is MEGT. So MEGT are a national apprenticeship network provider, and they host women in trade events all over the country. And I'm really proud to be the MEGT Women in Trade Ambassador for 2023. So if you want more information about MEGT or to find out about these Women in Trade events all over Australia, go to their website. It's linked in the description below the podcast. But really have a great day, rest, and I will talk to you next week.